Okay, so welcome to the September 13th meeting of the Library Planning Committee. And it's hybrid in person at the South Yarmouth Library. And pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation in addition to in person. Specific information such as instructions and guidelines for remote access by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town website at www.yarmouth.mass.us. For the public portion of this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch and listen and participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner, either with the Zoom link or by phone, or if they wish to send an email with questions or comments, they can use ckaufmann@clamsnet.org. So I will call a meeting to order. I think we have to take a roll call vote. So George Pavino?
Yes.
Mary Reardon Johnson? Here. Linda Callahan? Yes. Yes. Sue Loveland? Yes. Okay. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. And
Will is here.
Will, okay. So all in favor, aye, any opposed? Okay, so I'm going to rearrange the agenda. So because our guest today is Bill Scott, Assistant Town Administrator, and his schedule is very tight, so we'll deal with everything else after he makes his presentation. So Bill, if you would like to.
Sure. I'm going to hand this out. This is what Jane was working on for the scope of the study of $50,000 that was approved at Springtown meeting. And the primary purpose is to basically get public input that would formulate sort of more direction around your building program that was done by your consultant. And then doing that, determine the more and more finite way the costs and other factors in the building. I'm going to hand out now is the Mtg study and sort of give you those. Oh, it's up on the screen. Great.
The scope of work.
Yeah. So before we go on to the one that Jane had put together, Mtg scope is for the middle school reuse project. And this is where we want to eventually get from what Jane has provided us in terms of details on each of the steps of the scope, so we can put out a request for proposals. So should have this done in probably a couple of weeks to be able to release an RFP, but we will get the RFP back to this group before we move on, and it'll be in the form similar to the memo that we sent to the Board of Selectmen. So the important aspect is basically taking your building program that you have and then running it through a series of focus groups, surveys, and things like that to determine components associated with, you know, the library, because I think you're looking at combining the two facilities and building one. I mean, your foundation is that, then you want to move to site selection from there.
Yes.
So what we want to be able to do is get some of the, you know, involvement from the public as it relates to your programming, so that we can also, there's still questions I'm hearing about people don't wanting to lose their village libraries and things like that. So we want to get to the program that you have and then beyond the program. So when we did this in Newburyport, we did a building program, and we would have a mother's club sit in on a meeting about the sort of children's room, you know, and we had people, we had a periodical room where people would come in and read magazines in New York Times, and we had elderly housing down the street where a lot of people were coming in and doing that. In the old library and the new library, they helped formulate sort of the components of the program. So that's what we're looking at, and by virtue of that, you're attaching yourself to certain constituencies that get involved in the program from its base or foundation. Is it Johnson Company or something?
Johnson Roberts Associates.
Yeah, Johnson Roberts study. In addition to that, what Jane has outlined here is updating that document and some of the other documents, your building program, that the library director will update. So some of this is Jane and myself maybe doing some of the focus groups, because 50,000 isn't going to carry. You want to move that as much in technical support as possible in terms of architects or library programmers. And the first step of this is getting a list of constituent groups that you would want to interact with. I was surprised when we did the report, we went to the chamber and there was a whole bunch of people that work at home that were using the library as a base so that they could do a meeting and be uninterrupted in one of the meeting rooms. So now with people Zooming so much, to be able to have a Zoom meeting, I actually a while ago at the Newport Library did, not a while ago, but did an interview from the library because I didn't want to be interrupted at home. So there's a lot of potential out there for users that may not be your mainline users right now, but given technology and the changes in society, may be something that you want to look at more closely. Jane has told me that there is a ADA group that comes in periodically into the library. So how do you engage that group? What are the facilities that you would use for that group? Do you want to?
Is that part of your?
No, I think that the people who are more all disabilities. I'm not quite sure what the group was. I think it was people with physical disabilities potentially that came in. So the libraries have different, and you have a unique situation, 3 to 4 months out of the year, you just get inundated with population, people trying to find things. So how does that relate to how you set up a library here versus somebody that's not on the Cape? You can't use a typical library programming. So engaging with the chamber and, how does your meeting rooms become rooms for community organizations? You'd be surprised when I programmed the police station and was a project manager on that at Newport. We built a meeting room for them, but it got used by small committees like this all the time. It's right next to City Hall and is a great place for the meeting.
Yeah, so does our library, so does our police department.
Yeah, so those types of things, you develop a relationship with the constituencies, so as you move forward, you're getting support. But beyond that, it refines a building program. That the building program you have, they took population numbers, visitation, what you need for these stacks and everything else, and they develop a program. But now it's the human element we're really having. So the Mtg scope and you can find what I'm talking about right now online under the Board of Selectmen packet for August 30th. The Mtg scope, it's in their packet, and it is basically identifying. You already have a committee, and this identifies how we want to make outreach with constituent groups. In the case of the Mtg study, we didn't want the constituent groups to overwhelm groups that might want to use a facility. We didn't want them to control the analysis. So it's different with your situation, your building facility, but this is similar in the sense to what Jane has written up. But I think what we're going to do is take it, a step further, create a mission statement for you, a project scope, and then bring it back to you and then release the RFP. And then on the back, you can see there's a timeline that lays everything out. So one of the things Jane and I have talked about is the difficulty with library funding now. So we do want to time this so we don't lose an opportunity, but you have a queue in front of you right now, about 18 towns or something.
I think the number has come down. If you're talking about the waiting list of the previous grant round, I think it has come down and some have dropped out. So that moves other people up. It sounds as though they were able to divide it in half. And so the second half will be dealt with, but how long that will take to be dealt with.
Right.
We don't.
You know, we can look at timelines for this, but then you also take it to the next step, which is whatever your eventual solution is, you need to go to more finite plans, because programming, you need to move into concept plans and then 25% design and things like that to get you to bid specifications. So once we get this scope together, we should decide also what that sequence is. You don't need the site to determine what your building design and bidding sequence is. You know, the site isn't going to change that. So you can run parallel.
I disagree. I disagree too.
You know, there's sequence and design is going to be sequence and design. It doesn't matter what the site is. I'm just trying to give you a schedule, and then so that you know how it relates to the state funding. The design will change based on the site, but the sequence won't.
Okay.
So the site will affect your outcome, but you want to lay out the sequence so that you can see what your milestone is related to the funding, because all that matters really is the state grant, because you're not going to be able to pull it off just on town money.
And,
Well,
well, and they're also looking to change how they did it. It used to be 2 years prior to construction would be planning and design, 2 separate grants, and
Right.
there is a possibility that they may combine. So it would only be one. How they're going to do that, we don't know.
So that's the point, is if you look at this, you get to a point where your programming is completed, you're happy with that, you're going to move into a design phase. How does that relate to the state funding and when they release the funding? And so that's why the sequence is important. Once you develop the sequence, you can check back in with the state and say, oops, you know, we want to use their money for design and it's a year before the grant is released, so we need to change our sequence to get our RFP out sooner or later, or we have more time. So in grant funding, that's really the primary issue, is aligning your deliverables with their availability of money. So you may have a very short design window based on what they release for their funding.
That's why you have to have all of this in place.
Right.
beforehand.
Right, and that's it. I mean, the irony is you really don't need the site or a design. You just need a good schedule to be able to hit those milestones and arrange them with their milestones. So once you understand those things, then you say, we better select the site by this date. We better have the design by this date and things like that. So that's the thing that Jane and I can do for you. But Jane's scope is here. I'm going to turn it into something like you see with Mtg's, and then also give you a scope. Now this scope only gets us to the end of the utilization. That is, it tells us what will be at the site. That is what we're going to use the site for. Beyond this is design and everything else. So this is a much longer scope than what you want to get involved in. You've already done a lot of this. You know, it's a library that's pretty straightforward, and you've already done a lot of your programming. All you're really doing is taking a look at your programming as it relates to public interest groups and others that may use it, and then aligning it with that. And, you know, we can look at sites in a higher level, you know, in terms of site suitability is pretty straightforward. No wetlands, you know, you would hope to have, well, I'd say sewer yet, but at least water, access and all those kind of things. So based on our geographic information system, we could do a lot of that in-house. We can say, here's this building of X square feet, it needs X square feet of land, and 20% of this land is taken up by wetlands. So does it fit or not? And then I've done site selection and rating before. And once we get there and you get down to 3, that's when you really hire an engineer to knock out the 3 down to 1. So we can work on that. And I think the thing we want to do is always, although this schedule only ends at the utilization only because it's a 156,000 square foot building and there's a lot of questions, your schedule should go all the way up to, you know, bid documents. So that's what we want to try to create. including the grant application and everything else. So that's what we're doing is we do the study, but internally Jane and I can sequence your project pretty well. Then we're trying to figure out how it fits in with the grant funding and town meetings. I mean, difficulty in towns is, you can hurry up and wait, for months.
So you're also talking about a timeline that shows how long we need for like the survey process and the
Yeah.
meeting with the different community groups and all of that type of thing. And
Yeah,
that's-
so there's a study that you have the 50,000 for, but then there's the rest of the project to get you the bid specification. So, and then you want to basically lay out that process and then have, concrete, but, meaningful milestones so that you're not just sort of waiting around
Yeah.
for the state money. So after you finish the analysis and you've got community groups involved and you've updated some of your studies and the cost estimating is based on a programmatic approach. It's cost per square foot. All that has to go up. We're finding out in every construction project, escalation has gone kind of crazy. So we would look at what those costs are within the context of the study you've already done. So, I mean, I don't think they didn't do floor plans for you yet, right? They did component plans, which is here's one room. here's another room.
Adjacencies, some adjacencies and
Yeah.
things like that, but no schematics or anything like
Okay.
that.
Is
So,
that, you're referring to Mtg's?
No, I'm referring to the study that we had done by Johnson Roberts, and there was a report of that, but it doesn't contain schematics.
Right, okay, I keep thinking we're further along with Mtg's. And where are we with Mtg's?
that's
First time we're
so,
talking about it here with this group?
With this group,
Yeah.
officially, yeah, pretty much.
yeah, so I mean, this is a scope that went to the Board of Selectmen for that study. And as I was saying,
Meaning a study on.
the utilization of Mtg's, yeah. So but if this group is interested, we're gonna put out a request for proposals as part of that project to interest groups, focus groups, and whether or not they would want to be part of the reuse.
So that would go to this group as well.
Yeah, so they go to this group, to affordable housing groups, to other groups in the town. We were looking at maybe coordinating municipal buildings. So there's a whole bunch of ideas. The issue is trying to fit all the different puzzles together.
Can
Are
we use,
the members selected?
No, not yet. That'll probably happen after town meeting. We're going into town meeting to get the funding, then the members will be selected after that.
when you talk about Mtg's, are you talking about using the building that's already there or using the entire site?
Site and building. So I'll give you an example, recreation has had some strong interest because of the gym and the fields, the auditorium even. So there's some distinct advantages across a lot of our municipal groups, cross-referencing, I mean, so it's not out of the possibility that your group might consider it.
I think it's really important that this group and any group that follows along
Right.
is at the table to hear all the possibilities.
And that's one thing, although I'll be sort of managing the project, I'll also be getting the groups involved like recreation and others that are part of my direct oversight, like library. So I'll be helping you understand how to work through the RFP process. The RFP process is, I think, is the best way to do it. How much square feet do you need? How many people do you serve? So we sort of run a cost benefit and we say, do you have any programming cost estimates? And then we look at it from a perspective of all these different RFPs, how do they fit together as a group? So you'll have plenty of opportunity under this process to sort of chime in and to see if you want to be part of that opportunity. And the committee, though, that the key to the committee is we couldn't have library people on the committee because we wanted to have people that aren't having a direct interest in the property. Because then it would be just a matter of flooding the committee with people and taking over the site.
Now, does that affect state money if we were to be a part of something bigger?
Well, we need to figure out if the state money is okay for rehabilitation. I thought at one time, it is.
They're more open to other possibilities than they were in the
Right.
past, as I
That's what
understand
I'm
it.
saying.
Are we merging these two projects?
Just as a possibility. just, you know,
Newburyport
Once
was
an
a
hour.
rehab and an addition, so I'm familiar with that. They allow that, and they gave us like 6 million or something for it.
I don't know if it has to be a rehab of the old library or if it's a rehab of another building. I think you can
Yeah,
potentially
that's a good
buy
point.
another building and renovate it for.
So as we go through this process, we need to make sure that, we're not losing opportunity by considering,
Yes.
Mackey's
Yes,
funding, so.
yes,
But then there's the sale of these properties that would, probably help you in that. regard.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, the Matikes is there to introduce the topic, but also, there to tell you that what Jane has developed is basically, putting together, a group of people and updating the plans and studies, and, then moving forward with an analysis that sort of completes the programming portion. And then also, as I said, I can get involved with, help you with the site selection. So we would use GIS maps and everything else on hand, and maybe give you 5 sites, which later on we would narrow down with a consultant. But the budget's tight at 50,000 to sort of get you through this. So we're gonna have to have a lot of sort of input with, Jane and I and others to try to pull this together. Your first thing, as I said, is trying to figure out the constituent groups which would be interested in using the library, even the ones that you don't see now.
Mhm.
Because again, you're creating a new facility. So you might not have users here that you might have in the new facility. So thinking outside the box.
Are we talking about doing some of this prior to an RFP going out and getting a consultant, or is the consultant going to help with?
Well, the
some of
consultant can
this?
help with that, and I think it's a matter of, one of the things I always like to do is benchmarking. You look at other libraries and look for those innovative ideas, and you break those down into the components of the rooms that you have. So if you have a children's room, here are 3 ideas for children's rooms. Here's the potential plans. We did a site visit, here are the photographs. So when we were doing the Newburyport Library, we did that. We went to different places and sort of took stock or inventory. Then we sat down with our focus group and talked to them, but then showed them the benchmarking afterwards. You don't want to put the benchmarking out there and then they'll just say, oh, I like that one. And it's not really, they'll just be driven by what somebody else is doing. But, these things are things, that we could start. And so what I want to do is get you that and then determine what those steps are. And benchmarking is something that you can start, soon. And I'm assuming the library agency that hands out the funding probably has their plans, and whether or not.
We haven't heard anything yet. We keep asking.
Whether or not they have the plans of other libraries.
Oh, yes.
So they may be able to send us some of these things to look at the sizes of some of these rooms, and benchmarking is good when it's within 5 years or decade at least.
Well, and some of these things are pre-pandemic, and there are things that have been introduced because of
Right.
the pandemic, and also outside space and height of ceilings and air filtration and all of those
Right.
things
Right.
that were not included or focused on before.
Yeah, we, in Salem, New Hampshire, we were building a very big patio post-pandemic because we were gonna put a nice cover over it, and seniors were doing programming in the parking lot, jazzercise and all that stuff, and it's like, okay, no, we're not gonna do that anymore. So the large patio is a place for people who are still concerned about COVID to basically have an activity. So that's how we wouldn't have done that out normally. We were looking at putting an addition that was like a solarium there, but much larger patio is going to be a much better answer. So yes, your design should be updated based on some of those
Right.
attributes.
And some libraries are actually doing screened-in porches and things like that, so that you have the benefit of being outside, but protect you
Right.
from
Right.
bugs and things like that.
And, you want to think about, I know that, some libraries might have a small auditorium where theater groups, kids can hold drama exercises or whatever, that might be advantageous.
Mary, did you want to ask something?
I do. I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So Bill, I've been on this committee for a while and I'm frustrated. So let me apologize if my frustration comes out at you. So are we talking, I'm anxious to hear the administration or whoever, the town administration's position on where we are with all of this. Are we looking at a new library? Have you accepted the fact that we're going to be building a new library?
This is not a mayoral administration. It doesn't work that
Well,
way.
it's, I mean, that's huge in terms
No,
of.
I don't, I will provide you with the technical expertise to get you to the direction you want. But if you were in a mayoral administration, somebody would be sitting here saying.
So
"And
as
if
someone
we're
who
gonna-
works on,
we're gonna do
who's
this."
been working on the committee, we made our recommendation.
Right,
And it was a rational, well thought out
Right.
study.
and that's what we're going to run with. Because you made a recommendation.
Okay,
So you made a recommendation to leave the two sites,
no,
no,
well.
to build a new site.
Leave the
To
meeting, not
leave,
use
to
them.
divide.
Yes,
Yeah.
close them.
Exit
Well,
the two sites.
exit stage left.
And build one new modern facility centrally located, is
Correct.
what we said.
Right.
Correct.
So you made that decision. So there's a whole lot of,
But here's what I've not heard that has been accepted.
but you don't have enough information to fulfill that obligation. You have a building program, you don't have a site, you don't have really a good
Bingo.
cost estimate. No,
Bingo.
you don't have a good cost estimate. The building program needs a lot of work.
Okay,
And you haven't run this through enough of a public gauntlet to really get buy-in. So as a group, you've done great work, but that group needs to get constituents behind your,
so that's a
Product.
whole lot that you're saying we need to do. Some of it is again, and that is getting more costs and reviewing
well,
about what we need. But one of the things we found in terms of going out to groups, and you alluded to it in the beginning, is that some folks just don't want anything new. They like what they got. And they haven't possibly read the deficiencies
Right.
and the cost. In fact, that it's going to cost more to just.
right, so general public meetings is gonna elicit that because people are showing up because they are usually concerned about the price tag, they might be concerned about library. What I'm talking about is you get distinct user groups that use this library and you sit them down and say, here's what we got for a building program. Help us refine that. You know, I want a bigger children's room. I want more light. You know, you don't have design elements right now in your building program that talks about those kind of design features that you would have with more architectural work. So, you know, the building program is good, but I don't see a compendium study saying, and this group, you know, believes that here are some more components in it. So you have you know, I always like to break it down into objective and subjective. You have a lot of the objective information, but the subjective information, a person's opinion of that specific information, you don't really have. You have maybe a general.
From the community, you're
I
saying.
get.
From the community as a whole, you might, but from a focus group. So when we designed the children's room, we said, what are the components of a children's room to a mother's group? And a whole bunch of kids crawling around the floor and everything else in City Hall. And what are the components of this analysis? What do you like to see? And people talked about, and then actually ended up design. There's a small area where kids would sit around for reading. And it's like steps. It also became, you know, a place where they would sit around for that, but also became a mini theater.
So we're asking them the question, if we built a new library, what would you like to see in it?
What would you like to see in a new library? That's what you want to ask.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
What would you like to see in a new library?
Yeah, get rid of the if.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I mean, and what we need to do is get you to a point where, you know, I have worked in cities. And I used to have one mayor who said, give me a Gantt chart with a ribbon cutting. So when is the ribbon cutting? And that's really what you want to do, is get to that point. Because when you incrementally do things, you stop and you say, I think I'm done. And then no, there's this stage and this stage. So you don't have enough to get the funding right now. So that's the goal, is to get to the funding agency with the deliverable that they
And
want.
when we get there,
Yeah,
it's your belief or is that the town will come up with its percentage?
I would say that it's more likely you get a building with a grant than you would without one.
But the grant
I've worked in cities
requires
before.
a match.
Yeah, so I mean, it would be a shame, like when I think our match was about, how much is it?
I want to say 25%.
Yeah, so we have a $6 million grant in the report. We came up with more than 25, I think we came up with 40.
Does site count as part of the match?
If you buy it, I don't know, we didn't have to buy a site, we had the site. So that's a good question, but you would probably want to transfer property close enough to the, if you owned a site for a long time, I don't know how you establish value versus, or if you're, the gift of the site from the town, they're not going to give you a match for you coming up with your own site.
So one of my concerns is when I speak with folks about this, one of the ways to kind of make them feel better about there being the possibility of one new library is the location and it being a centralized location
Right.
versus us choosing which village wins. So for myself, when I look at, I think of the housing authority's site and all the acres that they have out there, and how wonderful the proximity would be to the senior center and those playing fields and everything else. But I'm also aware that the housing authority is beginning development.
They're a little bit further on than thinking that they have some plans that they're moving forward.
So has the town spoken to them about, because it might matter to us in the future where that housing is on the land. I just don't want to lose any opportunity,
Right.
sir, of out of lack of planning that and then where they're going to locate those units on that site, if it could be thought in terms of possibly our needs in the future.
No, you're right. I mean, I haven't seen the plans. I've heard that they're working on them. So we're looking at other things for the senior center and trying to expand their site. We're thinking maybe if we got like pickleball tournament capacity there with the senior center and the event space, the parking lot, it'd be a great location to bring people in. And so they are run out of land area. And so we're probably going to approach them about that. But that's a good point. We should look at those sites and other sites. I think one of the things you can look at is, I understand the central location, but given I've been here for a year, I've weathered one summer, and maybe it would be the community would be interested in trying to find a site that's not anywhere near 20 days.
Sure,
Because
definitely.
it is the place where I drive from Mashpee to here, and it's just bumper to bumper the whole
No
way.
back roads.
And
Yeah.
especially with, what's going to be happening to 28 over the next few years.
Yeah,
But I agree. I'm just, my sense is that, I don't want to lose the opportunity,
Right.
maybe, just in terms of, if we can talk to them now, as far as plant
Right.
location, that would really be helpful.
we have to figure out what your site size is. Usually it's just a ratio of building, and then building drives parking, drives site
We
size.
were looking at approximately 6 acres
6 acres?
with a 26,000 square foot building. That was what the
2
base.
stories or probably 2 stories.
That was not definite one way or the other,
Yeah.
because it depended upon the land,
Yeah,
is what we thought. And also if it was in an area, there were certain things could be shared, such as parking or use of a meeting
Right.
room or things like that. That could affect the size of the building and therefore the
Right.
needs for parking and green space and all that.
right. All right, so what we'll do is, I'll see what I can do about finding when I start some of the site stuff, but right now I need to get you one of these, but all the way to the end, and that.
Do you have a sense of when the RFP might be ready to be?
It'll probably take me 2 weeks to turn this into this. Given I'm in the middle of CIP, unfortunately, and finance committee budget process, so it'll take me, so Jane has done some great points here, but what you do is sort of combine some of them, put them in a paragraph, and it becomes an instruction to the consultant. And then you pull those out, and then you give an instruction to the committee or the volunteers that might do the work. So if there's going to be one paragraph there that basically talks about seeking, and making contacts with focus groups and setting up meetings. So we may do all that and get the focus groups together and get the venue together, and then the architect shows up. God forbid you pay $150 an hour so that somebody can make phone calls, set up meetings. So there's a lot that we can do as a group and that'll be sort of an implicit description in your scope.
So we're not looking to do anything before you get the RFP ready and it put out?
No, what I'll do is, once I get the RFP ready, we'll have a schedule, and there might be things pulled out of here that we can start right away.
Okay.
We've already done some site selection, I'm sure. So, but what we want to do is, your building is 26,000 square feet, and I look at it from a range of 25 to 30, and then I would go look at sites. But I wouldn't be, saying, hurrah, we found it, until we nail down all the details. Who owns it? I mean, you'd be surprised how much public property has underlying restrictions. It was given by somebody in the 1600s for this purpose, and you can only use it for,
Exactly.
we
know some of those restrictions, but
Yeah.
not necessarily all of them. We
Yeah,
just don't
no, I
want to
think
lose
it's already-
momentum
Yeah,
and
Or
interest.
the opportunity
okay, actually.
for sites.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
It's really something that's been bothering me for quite a while, and I'm very happy to hear you talk about focus groups, etc. Because in my mind, we should be out there pushing this now.
Right.
And and everybody looks at me like I'm nuts. But who in your mind should we be speaking to? I don't know, the Rotary, the JCs, the
Yeah.
these, the this, all of these things. So
But
we
those are
should,
generalized groups. You want to try to find the user groups that are inherent in your facility.
okay,
And they're,
should we talk to both groups? In other words, general groups and special groups.
yeah, I would
User
do that. I would
groups.
do the focus groups and special groups first, because
Okay,
when you speak to the greater audience, then you can say, and our focus group meetings found this. Because you want to make sure you go in there with the understanding that, we have people supporting us in these areas. So don't
Right.
start,
Right.
don't start with that. I don't like this stuff.
and we're not really out there, in my mind, asking for money. We're asking for
No.
support.
Support.
We're asking for you to,
Input.
I think we're also asking, what do you want from your life?
exactly, but
As your
I'm
group,
meaning
what do you
the
want?
general groups now. I'm not going to the JCs and say, we want you to, commit X number of dollars.
No.
What I'm saying is I want you to commit, or we want you to commit to supporting our idea, because now we get the focus group and we say, we can serve these people this way.
I'm thrilled, but that's not what I heard.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled that what I heard was, we're not asking for support, we're simply asking them what they want in a new library.
Okay, yes,
So we're not having the discussion, are we going to build a new library? And I appreciate that, sir, you have no idea. That we're saying, what do you want in a new library?
okay.
Not, I want this, I'm not,
Yeah,
in West,
and-
we're just saying, what do you want? So for me, he's absolutely right. We've got
Right.
to talk to
And
what
that's
does-
what we're gonna do in the focus groups and the general groups, but
So I'll give you a presentation. You might have a group that's related to people that work remotely.
okay,
And then some of them, as I said earlier, in the report, we have these small office carols, and they have Wi-Fi and everything else.
sure, yeah,
And that came out of meetings in the chamber that the chamber has remote working contacts to people who are part of the chamber, business people. So we sat down with them, and these things ended up to be on the other side
And
of the
so
library.
the chamber is a resource
The chamber is a resource.
for finding these focus groups.
Yeah, and so you might not think of that because you don't have that facility. right now.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, but
Right.
we were thinking about it because we saw people trying to hide in remote places in the
Sure,
library
right, yep,
and get work done.
yes.
And we said, maybe there's something there. And it turned out we had about 5 of those rooms, and people, register for them and they use the library. Other things, that the library became a place where it was probably a mile from the high school. So kids would walk to the library and wait there for the parents who would come and pick them up. Well, we figured out that, they were waiting all over the place. They were in between stacks, and
Mhm.
so we created a team area.
Right, yep.
And so they just go there.
Yep.
And so a lot of parents supported that, funded some of it. So, you look at those people whom you might look at as, well, do we really want to, encourage this waiting? It's going to happen anyway.
Right.
So give them the facilitation where they can
Right.
have a big round table where they can all get together as a work group and study. It's far enough away from the rest of the library, so it's private. So you start looking at the patterns of your use, and then you draw out of that the user groups, and then you might have a team, because frankly, they could have done that at the library at the high school, but they didn't want to, they just want to get out of the high school.
And it closes at a
And
certain
it
time,
closes,
so they have
right,
to
yeah.
leave.
Right.
But I still, based on what Sue was asking you though, I still have the question of when do we start that? Do we wait until you have?
Well, we
the
first,
RFP?
no, I think that we can develop the RP and we'll put it in the schedule when we start that, but I think the most important is you've got to do a deep dive into your, it's alliteration data, to figure out who uses this, when do they use it, do they use it in groups, and then figure out who some of those groups are.
So we can start that now.
You can start that now.
Before we get our things for
Right,
you.
because I mean, when Jane was talking about the village, issue and all that, I said, well, why don't you find out how many people from the villages actually visit your library to see if if less than 30% of the people are coming from the village, is it really a village library?
Wouldn't that be part of the survey process?
It can be,
Or separate.
it has to be at your front door. You can't really.
So it could be
find
done in two different times. It could be done first and then part of
I
the,
think that's data that's not necessarily lending itself to the facility. It's lending itself to tell a story that the village issue isn't as clear as we thought. Only 25% of the people that visit this library are from its village.
okay.
You'd be surprised. I mean, there isn't that kind of thing. The villages up in the North Shore, but people that visit the library are there for the downtown. You go study, you go get a cup of coffee, you have lunch, you come back, so there's a relationship there that if we put the library somewhere else, they might not go.
Yeah.
So, you may want to be in somewhat of a relationship, but I'd say one of your selling points is get it away from the traffic.
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Ease of getting there, but not in a high traffic area.
Yeah, and then if you look at, and then the other things you want to do in an analysis is, okay, what is the potential sell price for this and the other library? And then what is the tax revenue from not having it, it's not taxable right now. How much revenue are you going to get over maybe the life of your bond?
Is that something the consultant would,
I can do that.
you do that?
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's not that hard. I mean, you basically say if you renovated it at X number of dollars per square foot, then the growth would be Y, and then your tax bill would be, this.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the sale price, I think we could probably get some real estate agents to
Well,
help us figure that out.
what happens to these buildings after we move
Right,
is a whole nother,
the reuse, right. So, I mean, all you.
that stirs up a whole nother hornet's nest.
No, I know,
as you can
and
imagine.
I've had people tell me that, oh, we want to make a museum out of one of them, yeah.
Or we just don't, or that's one of the reasons they don't want a new library is because they don't want something different.
Right. Well, and it's a residential area.
That's
That's
right.
another thing
That's
that
right.
it's, there are restrictions
The
there.
devil they know is the one they
Yeah.
rather have, that's right.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, you know, whatever ends up here is obviously up to, you know, town meeting, the board of selectmen and that, this
Zoning,
kind of
things
study.
like that, yeah.
But usually when I run the numbers for sale, it's just that if you do this, this is what the benefit is.
Right.
If you want to do something else, then you might lose some of those benefits.
Mhm.
But you want a piece of property on the other side of the roadway too, don't you?
The,
There's a piece of vacant site.
you're
behind it.
talking behind us or across
Yeah,
the street?
behind me.
The town owns, I think
Yeah.
it's part of the land bank. Would that be appropriate? It was private property, with a fish market restaurant.
Yeah,
Is that what you're referring to? That
there's a field
Field.
on the roadway. that
That's
goes-
what it's gonna be in the,
purchased by the town. At one point, there was a plan to build a library on it. But
Okay.
I don't, the town owns it, it's town property,
Right,
the
I
library
know,
doesn't.
I know,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's just the point in terms of development.
It's not big
scenarios.
enough.
It's not big enough.
It's teeny.
No, it's not. It's maybe a parking lot, but that's what it.
That's right.
So going back, if I might, to the Council on Aging or the Senior Center, what is the plan there beyond?
Oh, I don't know.
fields?
I know the housing authority owns all around the senior center. And they want to develop it for affordable housing.
18 acres. Yeah.
And is the rec center that you alluded to, where is that?
Rec center.
No, there isn't a rec center.
I didn't think so.
Recreation
Recreation
department.
department.
They're interested in Maggie's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Recreation
Because
department was interested in Mattakey
Right.
because of the gym, the fields and the auditorium.
Because, you know, looking at the other towns and what they've done and learning from lessons from the other towns, they have, you know, some pretty significant
Facilities.
yeah,
Yeah.
senior centers and community centers,
Mhm.
which it seems like Yarmouth doesn't.
Well, your senior center is pretty nice.
Mhm.
It
I
is.
mean, I've seen much smaller venues than that in bigger communities.
Oh, I agree. I think the senior center, I think those fields across the way are gorgeous,
Yeah.
absolutely gorgeous. And for me, again, I love the idea of there also being a beautiful library that ties that all together
Right.
in terms of some kind of a
Near the
complex.
transfer station.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Mhm.
If you go on a Saturday,
Right.
a lot of folks use the parking at the senior center
Yeah, it's overflow parking.
Right.
while their kids are at the field.
Yes.
Yeah.
So all of that the synergy there is
Oh,
great.
Homer, yeah, okay,
Over park, yeah.
that's right.
I don't want to cut the time short, but I know you have,
Yeah, I have to
Limits on
really
your time.
five around there.
so if there's anything else that anybody wants to
Well,
ask
I
about?
think when we're talking about location, because I've been in the solar industry forever, and so people have asked me to scout the golf park next to the transfer station a million times, because the energy department, the committees always want to put solar on it to make money for the town. But have you thought about using that at all?
When you say using that, you mean?
Well, that's land that's
Oh, the
dedicated.
land.
Yeah, and it seems that there are some golfers who, and I realize we gotta talk to some people too. There are some golfers who love it and wouldn't want it to see anything happen to it, but there's quite a few who feel it's.
So you're
it's not-
talking about golf course land?
Yeah,
Lynx Park.
Yeah, the links is
So
an
Lynx
old
Park.
landfill.
Yeah,
so
right.
that's-
the one that's right beyond the
Right.
transfer station.
But
not the
I
one-
guess that would be up for discussion as far as with the golf division and, plans.
Oh,
And it's
okay.
Article
There.
97 land,
Yeah,
which means it's got, but I'm not convinced that because you're talking library, it couldn't be, because land that,
Municipal,
yeah,
yeah.
could be recreation.
And that's what we don't want to eliminate any possibilities as far as the piece of property. We knew that we focused on one that we knew was a possibility, but there were restrictions attached to it. So we're not, ruling anything out.
Yeah, the only reason I harp on the land near the senior center is I just don't want to lose
Mhm.
because of a lack of planning
Mhm.
and a lack of a sit down with them. I mean, I'm sure they have options where they're gonna site their new buildings.
Right.
And if they could do that in consideration of the potential of trading some land with us,
Yeah.
I would love that.
Yeah.
I just don't want to lose options.
And is there anything that the town's looking at near where Mattakey's is?
No, we would engage the library group in the Matikes, utilization study. Yeah, so, you know, we've had some discussions about, what if we, sort of coordinated all the municipal uses along 28. And that has some merit. I mean, you could go in, go to the library, go get your, you know, beach permit, go, you know, do everything in one place.
Well, and there's
Sign
also,
up for rec.
Yeah, sign up for
there's
rec,
also the
yes.
consideration of being away from the coast and, you know, the whole floodplain and the whole NOAA
Right.
surge zones and things like
And wait,
that.
there's no real traffic up there, at
You
least.
know, but there's a lot of property. So it's-
27 acres, isn't it?
Yeah, 70.
70.
7.
Wow.
Wait,
Wow.
for that?
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow,
There's only
There's a
27.
lot of property.
isn't that wonderful?
I mean,
And
yeah, you
there's
could
the
have
Andy
like.
Small School next door, which they're
Yes.
talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is, the back of the property is in the watershed area for the well. But the building itself is already there.
Mhm.
Well, there's also an 8-acre plot behind the the new middle school that was built, but the access is a problem to
Yeah.
that one.
That goes off those Christmas.
Christmas and
Right.
also
Yeah,
Old
yeah,
Townhouse
all
is
those,
is a
yeah.
property you need from Old Townhouse to be able to access
Right.
that
So
one.
Bill, this would make this makes my head feel better. So is there a group or is there a process whereby there's a potential for a large scale plan in terms of the building needs for the next 10 years? For instance, you brought up the notion, wouldn't that be wonderful, of bringing all the town offices together? Wouldn't it be wonderful to have some kind of a rec center? Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Well, you'd have that in Matikes because of the gym, the auditorium. I mean, when, in talking to rec director, we talked about, well, we could have afternoon movies for kids or bring in a theater group that could run theater training.
So when everyone does these focus groups, is there any economy of scale to do them together or to have large focus
Well,
groups?
when we do the Matikee study, we'll issue an RFP to individual constituencies like yours. Now, I oversee community services, which is senior center, library, recreation, natural resources, and golf. So I oversee those directly, so I'll bring together the relevant groups for Matikees and have you guys talk out if you want to file individual proposals or a joint one.
Mhm.
I can't help you too much because I'm managing the study and, you know, can't write it for you, but I think in the room, all those groups, recreation and everybody else, and Jane could probably put together a pretty good response.
Mhm.
What about the vision? Review. That was like.
Hey, Chris, can you hear me? Because I can't hear anything or see anything. Can't hear anything. Can you guys hear me?
And Liz.
Okay, now I can hear.
Sorry, thank you.
You can hear us now, right?
Yes.
Mary Reardon Johnson. Mary
Johnson, okay. And
Um,
George, your last name was,
Bovino.
okay, right.
So what I did was I went out of order of the agenda because Bill has to be at the Board of Selectmen's meeting tonight. So I just figured we could deal with our business after he was finished. I'm assuming there's no public comment. I don't think we got anything, Chris, did we, from the public? And Stephen wasn't able to join us. The two things that we need to take care of the approval of the minutes of previous meetings. That would be May 3rd and June 14th. And you've got copies of those documents. Does anybody have any comments, questions, any issues? Or can we just go ahead
I
and?
move the acceptance of the minutes.
And
I'll second that.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Remote,
There you go, well.
do we have to roll call? I think we have to do roll call. So Liz,
Aye.
yes,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
George, Mary.
Aye.
Linda, aye. Aye. Sue, aye, okay.
Aye.
Well,
Will, I'm sorry, Will, I keep missing you.
Aye.
Thank you. So all are in favor. So those can be posted and made available to the public. So then the next thing that the RFP has been taken care of. The next thing we have to go to is membership of this committee. So we have a new member. We've lost two members, Joe and, help me out here. Richard, but also someone else, no?
No, just those two.
Just those two, okay, sorry. And we've added Liz. If we still have room for more people on the committee, I think we can go up to 9. It says on our description, so if we know of any other people that are interested in, now we know where we're at as far as this RFP is concerned, we might be able to get more people to join us. I also have letters for reappointments, myself, George, and Mary, for 3 years. And you got your letters and
Yes, I'm gonna go tomorrow.
Okay. To be sworn in at town hall. I did mine yesterday. And Liz, were you able to do yours? And so you'll be asked to do the whole,
Repeat after me.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
But also the thing going online and doing the open meeting law, conflicts
Yeah, yeah.
of interest, all that, ethics stuff, all that. So that would be the next thing that we have to make sure we do.
Linda, when is mine up?
I think you're 2025, maybe? I have it written down. I don't have it committed to memory.
If you think.
I will. Also, I think it's time for us to change officers, or however we want to call it. I've been acting as chair, Mary's been vice chair. Richard, who has left the committee, was our secretary, and Jane has just been taking the minutes. So I would like to step down as chair, and I'm asking for someone to be willing to step up as chair. And also someone that would be willing to, and if it means a change of people in different, like as vice chair, that to happen, and secretary.
I'm gonna beg off as I'm a new member, and I don't think it's appropriate for a new member to jump in both feet quite yet.
Well, I could see it as secretary, if you would be willing to do secretarial
I'm
duties.
anxious about that because as it is, I was just cast in a play at Eventide. So I know that's going to be taking up more of my time than I ever considered when I took this post. So that's,
Okay.
I think I better be careful.
Okay,
What does secretary entail?
what is secretary? Take the minutes of the meeting and just make sure they get posted and things like that. So she has been doing it because Richard is no longer part of the committee, and he was our secretary. But he did it all before that. And, you know, I'm not sure the appropriateness of having the town employee be the secretary, because she's not even really a member. She's ex officio. So do I have someone that would be willing to take on as chair? It really is, what you have to do is plan the meetings and do the agenda and all that part of it, but beyond that, it's only as much as you want to do.
I hear crickets.
I know it's putting people on the spot. And if you're not comfortable making that decision right now, I'm just asking if you would consider it. And Will, did you hear that? Okay.
We should just make him, he's not here.
He was already our chair for a while, but because he's on the planning board, it's just really too much to ask to do that.
Yeah.
So, okay, I don't hear any answers. I'm hoping you're thinking about it. And the next thing on the agenda is planning the next meeting. Do we want, this is September, do we want an October meeting? And I didn't bring my calendar with me. Does anybody remember when? I think we were aiming for the first Tuesday of the month. And I don't think that is the holiday weekend. It is the second Tuesday, second
I think so.
Monday.
Yes, correct. So
So
Would be the second.
The 11th?
No,
that would be the
the
second,
second Tuesday, you
the
say?
fourth.
the first
Tuesday is
Tuesday.
the fourth.
So it being the, 13th today, do we want to meet again on the 4th?
I think
I
so.
think so. I
Okay.
think we should start making a
Got some
list of our
jobs.
constituencies.
And
Yeah.
plans for that, absolutely.
And
Okay.
I'm sorry.
just before I get off that a little bit, I really, really, really believe that we need to talk to the staff here and what they would envision. I think that is so critical that I was just involved in this interview process for the children's library. And one of the questions I asked is, if you had your wish, what would the children's room look like? And they all had something to say about that. None of us work in that room except that individual. And I think it's critical that we get input from this staff. If they had their wish, what would they like in a library?
So would you want that to be part of like the whole process of survey focus group, or do you want that first, or
I think
is
if
that
we're gonna
something that we can do
talk-
now before the rest of it starts?
As long as we document it carefully and professionally, I don't think there's any reason.
We have to bring Jane into the process of organizing it, and sometimes it's done through a staff meeting. Do we want to suggest that, or do we want to just say we'd like to interview the staff? How would you
suggest we do it.
I think we should make a whole list of groups that we want, and they should definitely
Be
be.
one of them.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
And I don't think it has to be first or last or the middle or
Okay.
whatever,
I'll
just.
tell you why I feel so
just one of
strongly.
those.
I went through a building project in a school where our superintendent never asked anybody anything. And we ended up with a beautiful library, but it was poorly designed because the librarian wasn't spoken to. You know, so it's really, that's why I feel so strongly this staff has to be involved in planning a new library.
So what should our task be for the next meeting?
Can I go back to, are you saying the first or the second Tuesday of the month?
We've been aiming for the first Tuesday of the month.
Okay,
So that's
In the past.
That's the fourth.
so that's the fourth.
And are we doing it at 4 p.m. again?
That's up to the group. We were doing it at 5:30. Will, can you chime in on? a
I would
time?
say, I would say personally, I think 4 o'clock is just,
Killer for you?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I also want to be reasonable. So I mean, 4:30 is possible. I don't think we need to push all the way to 5:30. 4:30 would be much better.
Any of those times are fine with me and the
Yeah.
rest of the group. You really have much more of a schedule that we have to fit into. So why don't we say 4:30?
Yeah, I think 4:30 is fine.
Good.
Thank
Let's
you.
try it. Let's try it.
4:30. Okay.
Okay.
So that's October 4th at
At
4:30.
4:30. And are we going back to Zoom for everything? Are we going to try and do things in person, hybrid?
I'd much rather do hybrid at least. I think in person we get much more done
Yes, I agree.
personally.
I agree. How about
Oh, yeah,
others?
I agree.
Mary?
Yes, I agree.
I think if, Will,
Will, please.
I would say as long as you're okay with me being a face on a screen every time, you can, I'd say hybrid.
As long as you're okay with that.
I'm fine with it because I understand that this is part of the dance we have to do in terms of scheduling. So I'm fine with it if you're fine with it.
All right, so we'll start by saying it'll be hybrid, because that allows for you, and Stephen usually is a member of the public. Okay, that's fine. Anything else that we have to be aware of going forward?
if you do decide to start with something, interviewing, canvassing on the 4th, and if you could use the Zoom and that could be a great way of recording an interview, you know, and then you can have that as part of a presentation. I mean, you can edit a video even, if you've got, you know, pieces of people who are passionate and make their statements about what they want, then you'd have that in your Zoom.
So, for the next meeting though, what are we trying to bring to the meeting?
A list of constituent groups.
Exactly.
Okay.
Create a
So
list
each one
of-
of us will do it in our own way to come up,
Sure.
and then at the meeting, we'll create the single list. Okay,
Is there any reason to bring the envisioning document into that?
there's no reason not to, so
Okay,
just,
so I'll take that, and I'll make
Okay.
sure that I bring that.
we did do some analysis of it too.
That you
and-
mean the town envisioning thing?
Yeah.
Seems like it was, you know, an effort.
Do they have, do they have data?
Yes.
I don't, let me finish. Do they
Sorry.
have data that tells who answered what? In other words, if you looked at the library section, do they have data on, well, didn't somebody tell us it was all older people or younger? Something.
Yes, I
Didn't
think
Richard
the
tell
age-
us that or
I
whatever?
think the
Okay.
age is there,
All right.
yes.
I can even inquire.
Or Will, did you say that? About the ages? I mean, if the people who answered the library section of the visioning, is there data on who they
I
are?
don't know.
Was it Kathy Williams who ran that?
Yeah, the
Or-
planning board ran it. Yep.
So I'll check with Kathy Williams.
Sure. I know she did a presentation to the planning board.
Yeah.
And I'll also find the analysis that we have already done, so you can use that, add to it. And it might have been just that Richard did it, and he was our
Richard
data
has
person.
14 million tons of data, I'm sure.
Right, right. Okay. And we'll start to talk to Jane about doing anything with the staff prior to that, and have them,
Well,
them come to that meeting? Do we want
I
that?
thought there's gonna be a consultant involved in this.
We're talking about things that we could do prior to the consultant being hired, because that's down the road.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to talk to Jane before.
Okay, okay.
Now, even if it came up with a little,
A process of doing it.
Yes.
right, but I mean, a little list that would take somebody 10 minutes. In other words, you're not adding to the work,
Right.
but we're just saying, if in your area, all right, you're responsible for what would be your dream of that? And
Yeah.
That's
it
right.
could take you 2 minutes.
The other thing.
I'm sure they're already thinking about, I mean,
Do we want to follow up on that whole, do you live in the village? Where do you come from? How do you get here? Just a mini survey on a postcard? kind of
Chris,
thing
is
that
there
we-
data on that?
So I get it. So there's a couple of things. So we have a ton of data on who checks out books, of course. We know where they live.
Okay,
But for people who use the library, right, you have to make sure that it's completely anonymous because we
Right.
value people's privacy.
right, okay.
So if you wanted to know who's using the building at all, which I think you do.
Yeah.
Then that, like you were saying, would have to be like a comment card survey thing. We can't directly ask you.
So
I can actually give you the circulation data, of course. I think also what you need to be, I don't know if I heard anyone say this, but what you also need to consider is you need to be reaching out to the groups that don't use the library.
oh, yes, yes.
And we, and I would say also that, I told Jane that we should have a no log, where we log down every time we have to tell people no, because we don't have the facilities for that. Every time someone calls up and says, can I rent a, do you have a space where I can do a Zoom meeting? And we have to say, no, we don't.
Yes,
Et cetera, that
yes.
kind of thing. So, and meeting space is a huge one, exactly what he was saying with the Zoom carols, we need those badly.
Yeah, if 100 people call up and want a Zoom meeting and you're saying no to 100 people, you know that, or whatever, you know that's
Every
something.
day. But of course, we also don't ask them how they live it.
Well, that doesn't matter.
We get calls.
But it does for the village thing, but not in general.
It seems as though we would need to really make a presentation to the, or somehow present all of this to the staff so they understand why they're being asked to do these things. That is part of the process to find out who uses it, what they need, what we don't have. And it seems to me that might come at a staff meeting.
I would, personally, I would let staff know ahead of time, so that they're thinking about it for a while, not just on the spot, coming up with ideas. I would, like I said, I would have a notepad at the desk for people to write things down as they come up. And then I would have staff all brainstorm about it together. And then if you wanted to have a spokesperson from here, do it, but I don't think that you all need to be there.
No,
All of the
certainly.
staff, because it's a ton of.
Absolutely.
So George, these are the kinds of things that you
Yeah.
bring to Jane when you have that
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you for chiming in.
And how much interaction does this library have with like East Ham's library? Or,
Well, it's funny you should ask. I was just chairing a meeting today with,
Do you know each other, by the way?
no,
Chris Coffey.
hi, I'm the IT librarian, and I'm also in charge of all the cataloging and everything. So, and I'm also the chair for the claims consortium for all cataloging issues. So, and related IT things. So, yeah, I mean, we have, do you mean East Ham patrons or staff at East Ham?
well, I'm trying, what I was trying to get at is where are you in terms of taking all the stuff that's been successful in East Ham or the other libraries and that being a part of this review?
We talk about some things. We all visit all the libraries because that's what librarians do on their days off, of course. I wish we're kidding. But another thing also, I used to work at Brewster, and Brewster went through the whole process, and of course just got
Pulled out. Yeah.
a couple weeks ago. But I don't know anything about that because I'm already gone. But we had, I was witness to all of it for years that I was there.
I would call that a pretty snazzy library.
Brewster.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of, but you know what? That's the thing. They're looking ahead. And they're the second oldest population in the state. And there's a very long walk upstairs to get to the circulation desk. And if you can't do stairs, it's a very long walk to their. It's not very
an
accessible.
elevator, but it's an outside elevator.
No, they have an elevator, but it, like I said, you have a long walk to get to that elevator, to get up, and then you're nowhere near the circulation stack. Also things like, not a lot of space for studying and whatnot, and little things that you don't think about, like outlets, like here, outlets. I'm sure if some of you have definitely heard me gripe about this, that we have surge protectors plugged into surge protectors plugged into surge protectors, and they're using everything that they're using for staff computers, and they're using one outlet. Just surge protectors into surge protectors, because there's no outlet.
But those are the kinds of things that the public has to know too, and we just haven't had the venue to get all of this out. I mean, we know these kinds of things too. General statements have been made about the lack, but the specifics have to be made very obvious, which is going to be part of that public information campaign. But like, I'm thinking like right now, what should we aim to do for this next meeting? I think I need goals.
Right.
Short-term goals, like what do we do for this next meeting? And those that, I think, George, you've heard enough so that you can bring to Jane what we kind of like to see happen soon in terms of getting the process going. So,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, if you can share with Jane too, some of the things that you just shared with us, and then we can.
I don't think I've heard anything she doesn't know, but yeah.
Exactly, but to have it now, like, we'd like to start on these things now, like that whole idea of the postcard, we could get that going. However way we need to do it, it's something that could be, soon rather than later. I think we lose enthusiasm and momentum if we don't have these short-term goals. Liz, I'm sorry, I didn't
Oh,
mean.
no, that's okay, because I'm like you, I get such ahead of steam that I'm very interrupted, so forgive me.
Oh, no.
But
And what postcard are you talking?
Well, like, where do you come from? Do you come from the village or, something like that? Like he suggested, finding out, do people, like the whole village concept.
Right, and that was
I think your biggest problem with that is getting buy-in. What is going to compel people to fill that out? They came in to print out. They came in to print out a form that the RMB is making them do, like, why are they gonna write down, Dennis?
But is there a reason not to do it? I don't know. I'm just.
we tried to do that on the library board.
Yeah.
Remember, were you there, Lynn? And so I said, we put stuff all over the city. And had cards. I got none.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And I
just
drove
don't see
from
that.
here to West Yarmouth, to the Chamber, to Yarmouth Port, to here, to there. I don't know, half a dozen times in maybe 6 weeks for absolutely nothing.
People
So
don't
I
want anyone
think,
knowing
I
any
think
of
we
the
need
business
something
going
from
on.
your data. I don't think we need
Okay.
people signing something. I think we need your data. I don't need to know who it is, but I need to know there are 100 people from Bass River area that have come into the library in the last month.
We need a lot of- yeah.
Are you gonna be able to get it that time?
We can tell you, we can get you circulation
Right.
data with this. We can't, so if people are coming in and using the library for other
Yeah.
purposes. We can't.
Right.
Right, yes, that I
do
understand.
you at least have a head count of how many of the people coming through the door?
Yeah.
Or
On a daily
how
basis,
about-
and we count after 5 PM too, because we want to know.
Yeah.
For staffing
Yeah.
reasons, like, are we justified in saying open till 8 PM every night? And,
And also, you also have, not even circulation, but library card holders. You
Yeah.
must be able to give us some kind of data on that.
Yeah, and a ton of them got cleared out after the pandemic, because what they did was they made all library cards active for a while. But what they did was to then to stay within Massachusetts state laws about the MDLC rules. You have to purge your system every couple of years, so they no longer had that expiration date to go by. So they went by active date, and it wiped out a ton of our patrons.
So when they go to use it the next time, that's when they have to re-register.
Yeah, they'll have to re-register. Most of them probably, but we have, and I'm sure you all know that we have the percentage of town residents that have library cards is not large.
Right.
But it doesn't mean they're not using.
How about out-of-town residents who have library cards? Is that A significant
so-
number.
It's a decent, yeah.
I'm wondering if, since it's almost 5:30, is if we can, talk about these
Sure.
kinds of things, maybe at another point or.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut
No, I
anybody
didn't.
off,
No,
but
I think that's a good idea.
Does it make sense, or do you gain anything? Paul, so there's a new Chamber of Commerce director or whatever, Paul Nitzwicki. And he was running the Cape Cod Commission, and I worked with him there.
Yeah.
And he's a very energetic, passionate type of personality. And I'm wondering if we brought him in to pick his brain, he's in the Chamber of Commerce, who would you recommend we go and interview as part of our constituent review? He also might take a liking to the project and be a terrific resource in terms of brainstorming and championing. He's brilliant when he goes out to speak.
is he Cape Cod Chamber or Yarmouth Chamber?
Cape Cod Chamber.
Because I think Bill is referring maybe to Yarmouth Chamber.
Well, Cape Cod Chamber,
It wouldn't hurt.
wouldn't be a bad thing. And
Yeah.
like I say, and the other thing I want to say before you
I
disband,
understand geographically what's the
Two different
difference, but the one that's down here is Yarmouth, not Cape Cod.
But
So you're
Not to say
talking
we
not
couldn't
about the one down there, you're
no,
talking
because
about.
having been in business and so on, I found that the local chamber, this was Orleans, but I didn't find that the local chamber was as much of a resource
As the Cape Cod.
so how about you do both?
Exactly. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that what wasn't discussed, as I mentioned, my background is energy. And so I've been putting in solar projects. I did the ones at Matikes, at ME Small, and so on, through an organization called Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative. And one of the things, and I did the installation in Eastham. And what we were trying to do, I'm no longer there, but what we were trying to do is create community resilience centers for an emergency. Where do you go? Even if it's just to charge your phone. And I didn't hear that come up, but that could be a tremendous focus for you as you go forward as an important contribution to the community.
Right.
And location will be a key part to that too, because you have to have the photovoltaics to feed any power that you want to be able to distribute to the community.
I know in general, being a place in times of crisis has been used, very general term, but that's
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about. I think the Howard Library after the tornado was a place that people could go because they had a generator. So,
Yeah.
having a generator, that
The
kind
shelter is at DY High.
Mhm.
Right.
Eastham, that's one thing the Eastham Library's been great for too.
Yeah.
They've been,
Yeah.
because they've got all that space.
Yeah.
I would, you know what, speaking of my wish list, by the way, we could have a sheltered 24-hour Wi-Fi area that people, like a
Mhm.
sheltered area, where people could use the internet 24/7, that would be huge.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, that should be now.
So there you go.
So for next week, next month,
Mhm.
you want us to have a list of focus of groups that we think should be interviewed, okay? And let me just say that what I know of focus groups is that it's important that we have consistent questions.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So, and that there is someone who leads the group and someone that takes notes of the group.
Mhm.
So I just want to not have us jump ahead and think we're going to do this right away. There's some science to focus.
You're right, you're right.
And I-
And we
So
did
maybe
have-
we should come with a couple of questions that we think are also important.
Yeah.
Possibly that would make sense too.
We had someone do focus groups way back, I don't know if you were involved in it at the time.
Yep.
Cheryl Bryant did it for the very beginning of this whole strategic plan and things like that. And, someone took notes and, it was a whole presentation, so.
My point is that there has to be some consistency in the questions that are asked, and how the data is.
Well, let's
collected.
plan on using the next meeting for that purpose, like to figure out what we're supposed to do.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And I would also urge you, as you start collecting anything that is a communication from a person, that it be videotaped. Because there's nothing more persuasive than a strong video in the
The
end.
difficulty with that is we have to have somebody from the staff,
Well, again, unless it's a Zoom
unless you're offering to
situation.
do it.
Well, or Zoom. If people are on Zoom, you automatically get their interview.
But
You
you
have to get permission.
Right, and you say, we're going to be recording, is that?
Well,
okay?
and that's the whole thing that this whole meeting is recorded. So
Right.
I think maybe we have to think a little bit more on how we would actually do that. Because, yeah, I'm just not sure. It's not a bad idea, but I just don't know how we actually do it.
Well, I put all my meetings on YouTube, for instance. And that way, you know, when the person who's speaking is highlighted,
Yeah.
they're big. And
These go up on YouTube. These
Right.
these
Okay.
meetings go up on the
But
town.
you can pull them apart too, so and take the piece that you want and then edit it together with
Okay.
statements.
Okay.
Individual person statements.
Okay. All right, so I think we have a plan for next month. Thank you, Will. I wish you were over this way so we could be looking at you better. But I don't
Well,
want to.
I mean, I hate to say this, but I can only see the three people in the middle, so
know.
I've just given up on seeing everybody. It's fine.
Have to figure out a better configuration.
It's fine. You guys do what you gotta do. This is working. It's not the end of the
Okay.
world.
All right, so I think we will adjourn. And did you hear, Will, that Jane's mom passed away?
I think I heard that right at the beginning, but I certainly am.
Just want to make sure you knew.
Thank you for clarifying that, but yes, thank you.
Okay. All right,
Take
so
care, Will.
I think we're done. Good to see you. Bye.
Bye.
I'm sorry to record. Yes, please.
Must be over.
92. Wasn't?
And I don't know how old she was.